Has anybody here ever set up a lighting system and then you fly it up in the air and turn it on and realize that you have 100 fixtures and 2 of them have the DMX address set wrong? You ever done that before? I have, yeah. So, yeah, it happens, right? So in the old days, you'd go get a ladder and climb up the ladder, or you climb a rope ladder up to the truss, and you get up to the menu, and it's dark and it might be noisy because they're doing sound check or whatever, and you're up there messing with the menu. Now we have a better way of doing it now. It's called remote device management, or RDM. So RDM came out in 2006. It's a new protocol. It's an industry standard protocol that allows fixtures to send information back to the console, which is huge because up until then, you weren't able to remotely set a DMX address, because if there's no way for the fixture to confirm, to acknowledge that it got the data correctly, then if the data gets corrupt, then you've lost control of that fixture, and now it doesn't work. So, and we've had remote control for television since the 1950s, so it's about time we got remote control of our lights. And so the way it works is that with RDM, the controller can send an RDM command and the fixture can respond. The fixtures are not allowed to send any information back to the controller unless it receives a request to do that through RDM. And that's because you don't want a lot of fixtures sending a bunch of information back to the controller and choking the network, because then it'll slow it down, and when you press the go button, it's going to take a while, and that's not good either. So even though RDM came out in 2006, it's taken a while for it to really gain traction in our industry, and I don't really understand why, but I do know that in the early days, there were plenty of fixtures that did RDM, but there weren't many consoles that did RDM. And in fact, the Martin M series, which is now the Elation M series, was one of the first. I mean, from day one, Martin jumped on that bandwagon, and the M series consoles would do RDM. So now they have a track record of 12 years of doing RDM. And the other company that did RDM from day one was ETC. So all the ETC consoles do it. And it took a while for some of the other controllers to catch up, but now Avolites does RDM, and the grandmas do RDM. That was a recent thing. Most others do. The one exception to that now is the high-end systems. The Flying Pig consoles don't do RDM. Now, in the early days, I always thought that if you don't have a controller that does RDM, then it's of no use to anybody. But I changed my mind about that, and I'll tell you why. I was doing a show one time when we went into this big arena, and we were setting up a bunch of lights around. There was 24 vomitories, or exits, in the arena. And in every vomitory, we set up a goalpost that was probably about 14 feet high with a crossbar that had a bunch of movers and some strobe lights on it. And my job was to run the crews that were installing all of the lighting around the vomitories. And so we loaded in, we set everything up, and when we got everything powered and cabled, then the controller, a guy named Henry Parks, came in and sat down behind the console and turned it on, and he started programming. Now, to do a rig check, what Henry did is he grabbed hold of all the fixtures and he started strobing them. So every fixture in the arena, and there were lots of them, was doing this, strobing. And then he could look around the arena to see if they're all responding. And there was, I think, 4 strobe lights that were not responding. And so he came on the radio, he called me on the radio, he said, "Hey Richard, I've got 4 strobes that aren't responding, can you go check them out?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Now what that meant is I had to walk across the arena to the boneyard and grab a 12-foot fiberglass ladder, walk all the way across the arena, and go climb up the stairs to the vomitories, and set the ladder across the goalpost, the crossbar, except the ladder wouldn't reach. It was like that short. So I had to walk up on the bleachers around back. I had to take my C-wrench, loosen up the nuts on both sides, drop the crossbar down far enough, tighten it up a little bit, take the ladder, climb up the ladder, and it's dark, and all the lights are strobing. And I'm reaching, I'm contorting myself around the back to read the little dip switches on the strobes with the flashlight in my mouth, and I had my smartphone in my hand, trying to match up the dip switches to the DMX schedule on my smartphone. So I checked the first light, and the dip switches were set correctly. So that wasn't the problem. And I checked the power, and we always run 2 DMX lines. One is the spare, one is the main, just in case for this very reason. So I swapped the DMX cable, still didn't respond. So I don't know what's wrong with that light, but I'm moving on to the next one. Maybe the problem originated upstream from that. So I go to the next light, do the same thing there, drop the crossbar, climb up, check it, everything checks out, and the third and the fourth. And by this time, an hour and a half has gone by. And I cannot find the source of the problem. Everything seems to be working fine. And so after an hour and a half of this, and I can't find the problem, I radioed back to Henry, and I said, "Henry, I'm sorry, I don't know what the issue is. I can't find any problems." And he said, "Well, stand by." And he comes back a minute or two later, and he goes, "My bad, I had it patched wrong at the console." Now, I didn't have anything better to do with that hour and a half, but had we had RDM, then instead of taking an hour and a half, I could have checked it in 5 minutes. What I would have done is I could have unplugged the data line, the DMX cable going to the first of those 4 fixtures that didn't work. I would plug in my handheld, my XMT, and I would go into RDM mode, and I would say, "What is your DMX address?" And the fixture would then tell me what its DMX address is, and I could check it against my address schedule on my smartphone, see if it matches. And if it does match, well, I know, number one, that the fixture is on, that it's powered up, that the data cable works, and the DMX address is set correctly. And then I would have done the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and it would have taken me 5 minutes instead of an hour and a half, So that's when it dawned on me that, hey, you don't need to have DMX in the console. As a matter of fact, in a lot of situations, like who here has ever programmed a show before on a console? Okay, yeah, most of us have. So who here has ever had plenty of time to program the console before a show? It doesn't happen, does it? There's never enough time. There's never enough time, right? Oh, Sean raised his hand? Sean's a spoiler. Well, we're not all as privileged as Sean is. But anyway, the point is that in most situations, I think it's unfair to ask the programmer to stop what they're doing and check the DMX addresses on these fixtures. That's, in a perfect world, we have a programmer and we have an electrics crew, or a lighting crew. And it's that crew's job to do that kind of stuff. The programmer's job is to program the show. There's never enough time in my experience, So I think it's in fact better to have a handheld that allows you to do RDM, like an XMT350 or a DMX CAT, and that will free up the programmer to focus on what they need to do, which is to program the console. So it doesn't detract from their time. Now, if you if you have a handheld, then the way you would use it would be you'd have a data splitter either at Dimmer Beach or under the stage or something, and you've got your home run to the console, you've got all your links out to the lights. To test a certain fixture, you'd have to know which link it's on. You'd have to come over to the data splitter, you'd have to unplug it. Now you just stolen control from the console temporarily while you check it out. And when you get finished, you plug it back in, and now you've turned control back over. So you can't both have control at the same time. Now there are switches that run RDM that I believe you don't have to steal control, But I do know that RDM and DMX use the same cable, so obviously you can't send it a DMX signal at the same time as an RDM signal. But if you have a switch that has an RDM app, then it's going to minimize the time that you've taken control away from the controller. Okay? So RDM, remote device management, is a relatively new protocol, and it allows you to do basically anything that you could do at the fixture menu, you can do remotely, either from the console or using some handheld RDM controller like an XMT350, or there's several others out there as well. So RDM uses the same physical layer as DMX, and the physical layer is everything you can touch. That means the same cables, the same controllers, the same connectors as DMX. The only difference is that the start code for RDM is hexadecimal CC or decimal 204. So it's a different start code, and it signals to the receiver, hey, this is not a DMX packet, don't treat it like a DMX packet, it's something else, it's RDM. So that way the receiver doesn't glitch. And the RDM packets are interspersed among the DMX packets. So the way it works is, if you're using a console, the RDM features from a console, then the console will continually spit out DMX information. 44 packets per second, or in this case 37 packets per second. And then when the operator presses a button to issue an RDM command, then the controller will stop outputting DMX, and it'll output one packet of RDM, and it'll wait for a response back from the fixture. Once it gets the response, then it will go back to spitting out DMX again. If it doesn't get a response, it's going to wait a certain amount of time, and it'll time out and then go back to DMX again. So all these RDM packets are just interspersed among all the DMX packets. Now, this is a little demonstration, and we're going to need audio for this. Do we have audio? Is it break time again already? So this is a little video giving a short demonstration about how RDM works. So this is an REL7 fixture. This is my XMT350, and it's just going to walk through a little short demonstration if we can find audio. If not, I have a Bluetooth speaker.
I'm going to go into RDM mode, and it discovered the fixture. And I'm going to go into, I want to change the mode, so I'm going to go into the details. It will show the label, the model, the manufacturer name, start DMX address, and personality. And this is what I'm going to change. I'm going to go into personality, and I'm going to change it to mode 1. I'll say OK, and it's changed. So if I then back out, it shows that it's keeping in mode 1, which has 8 DMX slots. It shows the device details. If I go into details, it will show the software versions, the boot version, the model description, the model ID, and some more information. It shows the product detail. And I'm going to send that command to get the details. They got 2 entries, so I can look at those. It shows the LED and the pulse width modulation. So if I look at that, it should show me that it's in pulse width modulation mode. So I'll back out of that and go back to the product detail, the slot information, the slot descriptions, If I go in slot descriptions, it will show me all of the slot numbers. And I'm going to get the slot numbers or the slot description. Okay, no ones. It shows the default slot values, some more device info, and so on. And I can go back and look at the by state, the lamp menu,
built out.
the sensors. If I look at the sensors, it will show me all of the sensors in the fixture.
Compliant, yes, the complete list of fixtures. Compatible means that.
And there's all kinds of temperature sensors, voltage sensors. And I'll go back again. And look at after the sensors comes, there's more information. And you can invert the display, do some other things. I'm going to back out. So I'm back at the beginning of the menu. Okay. Now I'm going to change the DMX address. Right now, the DMX address is at 1. I'm going to change it to 100. So I can scroll up to 100. And when I have it, I'll just say OK. And now it's set to 100. So if I go back to the mode, back out to the mode menu, and I'm going to send it a DMX address. So I'm going to send mode, say OK. I'm going to go up to channel 100. And now I have control of the fixture. I can turn it on to 100%, 50%, or 0%.
Okay, so you might have noticed that the first thing that happened is when I plugged in the XMT and I went into RDM mode, it automatically discovered that fixture because that was the only fixture on the link. If there was 100 fixtures on the link, it would discover 100 fixtures and it would give me a list on the handheld. It would list them all. Now, it would take a little bit longer time if there was more fixtures, but it did it instantly like that, right? So once you have, that's what's called the discovery. Now, on a console like this, there's going to be if you go into the RDM menu, there'll be a discover command. And if you press the discover command, it's going to discover all of the RDM responders that are in the network. And then once you have the list, then you can scroll down the list, select one fixture. Now, if you have a rig like this, we might have, I don't know, 100 lights in here. And so that means if they are all RDM responders, your list is going to be 100 fixtures long. And you scroll down and select one, but you don't know which one it is. How do you know which one it is? Well, RDM has an identify command. Now if you say identify, then that fixture is going to start flashing. And then you can go, oh, it's that fixture right there. So then you'll look on your light plot and you look and see what the DMX assignment should be, and then you can ask it, what is your DMX address? And it'll come back and say it's set to 32, and you'll look and you go, oh, it's supposed to be 36, so you can change it. And then you go on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So that, in a nutshell, is how RDM works. The way a fixture manufacturer implements it in the fixture and in the console differs. There's a RDM specification, but every implementation of it can be slightly different, So I want to talk more about RDM, but rather than talk, what I'd really like to do is allow you guys to try it out. Because again, we're in a fortunate position that we have some gear here, we have some handhelds. But before you do, we're going to rewind a little bit because we were talking about, I want to clear up this issue about the data splitters, whether or not you need to terminate every port on a data splitter. So here's, this one is a Opto Branch 8. So this is an 8-way data splitter, Elation 8-way data splitter. And if you were to open it up, then you could see every output has a power supply and a transceiver chip in it, and those are optically isolated. So this is an optically isolated data splitter, and if it is optically isolated, you do not need to terminate every output port that is not being used, because optical isolation prevents the signal reflections from going back upstream. Now, just remember, not all data splitters are optically isolated. This one is, but not all of them are. If it's not optically isolated, those are the ones that need to be terminated at every output port that's not being used. Okay, does that make sense? Yes?
Not all splitters are RDM.
That's a good point, yeah. So what Kevin said is that not all splitters will work with RDM, which is true because DMX is a unidirectional protocol. RDM is a bidirectional protocol. So for you to be able to use RDM at the console, if you're going through a data splitter, you actually need an RDM splitter, not a DMX splitter. Sometimes they're called an RDM hub, which is a bidirectional data splitter. So we'll talk more about that again a little bit later on. But for now, I would encourage you to come up here. We've got 3 different fixtures. And I would like for everyone to get a chance to take a handheld, an XMT, or I think somebody brought their DMX Cat. You might want to try that one too. But for the DMX Cat, that's another manufacturer. That's City Theatrical. If you want to try the DMX Cat, it takes a Bluetooth connection on a smartphone, and you need to have either, you need to download the app. So if you're on iPhone, you can download the DMX Cat app on the Apple Store, or if you're on Android, you'd have to go to the Google Play Store and download the DMX Cat app in order to use that one. But otherwise, you feel free to come up here, and I want you to put the handheld in RDM mode, discover the fixture, and then look through all the attributes and see what kind of information you can gather from the fixtures, okay?